Hello, Watchman of Ephraim or Rick. This teaching is going to be about the end time, latter day fate of the Hebrew roots movement, this fake demonic movement that has appeared in these last days, requiring you to keep the law as written by Moses, as many commandments as you can, actually to be saved. They will deny it, but then ask them if you don't keep the Sabbath, the shadow Sabbath, what happens? Well, you'll be destroyed forever in the lake of fire. So I've done many videos on this, and really don't want to spend a whole lot of time, but I believe the fate of this movement was witnessed by Paul and Peter. And I'm going to tie in a conversation that I had on Facebook with a Hebrew rooter who thought I was a mainstream Christian. So those that follow this channel know that I proclaim the righteousness of God has been given to, the first fruits, the righteousness of God himself, without the Torah, being witnessed by the Torah and the prophets. And I may have to go there to get my point across once again. I try to be very comprehensive with these videos, and I have to admit lately, not really motivated. I've done lots of videos on this fake movement that is destroying the whole Torah. Both this movement and mainstream Christianity are false. Mainstream Christianity, beginning with the Roman Catholic Church, is the mother harlot of Mystery Babylon. And in these last days, this movement has come out of came from that movement. Primarily Herbert W. Armstrong, Loma Armstrong, and their fake paradigm. Which days do you keep? The fixed appointed times of the Old Covenant Testament versus Christmas, Easter. I've gone over this many times. The curse of Herbert Armstrong and Loma Armstrong. This was not the debate in the first century. The debate was over the Torah of faith and the Torah of the priesthood, which I have shown, versus keeping the letter of the law, the gramma, or the law as written by Moses, the shadows of the good things to come. I believe the fate of this fake movement is what Paul declared about them, or those that push this stuff on the first fruits in Galatians 1 verse 8. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this demonic movement, which I believe is Revelation 3:9, the synagogue of Hasatan. Synagogue. Those that say they are Jews and are not. They want to look like Jews, speak like Jews, Hebrews, act like them, whatever. Look like them, look like Jews, look like Hebrews, and so on and so forth. They are actually, they are actually under the Torah of the common people of the land. I broke down the Torah. Okay, anyways, I don't want to get off. See, I'm trying to be as thorough as I can, and I should just get to the point. Okay, those that follow this, blowing shofars on the Feast of Trumpets, believing that they will be remembered by God. God is going to save them and remember them. No, just read 1 Thessalonians 4. You'll see the end fulfillment. The reality can be found in the Messiah. Anyways, just this movement that is completely fake, demonic, destroying the whole prophetic revelations of the Torah. Anyways, I believe that the fate of the Hebrew roots movement can be found in what Paul said about them and what Peter said would come in the latter days concerning false teachers. And I'm going to show you from a conversation I had a few weeks ago with a Hebrew rooter on Facebook. I'm going to show you how he denies getting the Passover by faith. And this was the argument of Paul and even Peter. The Acts 15, the council at Jerusalem and Paul's epistles, the Torah of faith, versus the Torah of the works of the law, or the Torah, like circumcision, keeping the Passover every year, keeping unleavened bread every year. The apostles, after this, especially after this council, realized you got it by faith and not by the works of that law. But you'll see with this conversation, and this is another video in itself when I get into this conversation, another teaching, how this man denies, he will not admit that you get the Passover by faith. You get it on the day you believe. When you're baptized, when you believe, the death angel passes over you. You are redeemed from sin. You are bought back. God buys you back. If I can find the picture along, this is, unfortunately, this is because of my lack of motivation lately. This is a pretty unorganized video. But this man will not admit, this is like the sixth person I've run up against. They cannot admit that you get the Passover, the end fulfillment, and what the end of the law is what gets established. This man cannot bring himself to admit that he got the Passover when he believed, but he has to keep the work of that law. And he's going to tell me, he told me, he's going to tell me that this is his righteousness. This is blasphemous. You'll see it. And then you'll see Peter mentioning teachers like this. It's going to teach this stuff. These people are being destroyed by their teachers. Both these movements are fake, mainstream Christianity and the Hebrew roots movement. Both are going to be destroyed, I believe, because of their blaspheming, because of their destroying the work of the Messiah, the end fulfillments, which you get by faith. I'm starting to warm up a little bit. All right, what did Paul say? Let's get into it here. Galatians 1:8-9. This epistle is all about, in allusions, actually Pentecost, Shavuot, with the, if you want to call the summit of this epistle, chapter 4, verses 21 through 31. It says, it talks about two covenants, and talks about the Jerusalem from above, which is a video in itself, and I'm going to get to it. The Jerusalem from above. 3 times a year shall all your males appear before Yahweh in the place where he chooses to put his name. And Pentecost happens to be on the 8th day, 50 days after the wave sheaf offering, 7 Sabbaths complete. Then you have an 8th Sabbath, or you have, if you want to fill out the week, that last week, you have the weekly Sabbath, and then you have the morrow after the Sabbath, which is the 8th day. You received your circumcision and you went up to what? What is Jerusalem a shadow of? The heavenly Jerusalem, the new Jerusalem. You went up. So this crap they're pushing on you actually is the people coming in the next age are going to have to do, and you're going to teach them. He's going to give you teachers that will teach these people properly that it's all about the Messiah as they do this stuff, not for their righteousness, though. You're going to see in this conversation, you'll see it. But even if we or this is New King James, even if we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel to you, then what? Notice, let me back up. But even if we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel to you, notice that, to you. Who are you? Then what we have preached to you. Who are you? Let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone preaches any other gospel to you, who are you? Who are these epistles being written to? If I may digress, the first fruits, who are what? Priests. There is a different Torah for the priesthood than excuse me, I'm going to bounce around because I've got other stuff on here that I want to do teachings on. Who are you? Do I have a picture of it here? Bear with me. Who are you, the first fruit priests, who are coming in the next age, the common people of the earth, who will have to do these things? And they will seek the Torah from your mouth. You're going to teach them these things that, well, I'm witnessing to this guy, and actually another guy on another post. He's trying to say that you should be keeping the Passover. The real Passover is in September and not in the spring. God help us all. I tried to tell this guy. The Passover when I was fulfilled when I believed. He came back and he said, no, it's in September. You see what they're doing. And I'll get into this. They are destroying the work of the Messiah. As they get more and more into these rituals, they think their righteousness is coming from these holy days, wearing tassels, eating a kosher diet, when they are all just shadows of things concerning the Messiah. Therefore, they are destroying the end fulfillments of the Messiah for these rituals. Everything man does is strange. If you'll just take a notice here, too. Let me get back to when you look at this wolf in sheep's clothing. This is what this movement is. An unclean beast in the skin of a clean beast. So these are people from the outside coming in. As Paul said he witnessed to the church of Antioch in Acts chapter 20. That's a whole nother teaching in itself. Anyways, let me get into this. Well, wait a minute. Let me go back. Galatians. Okay, so let him be accursed. Anathema. What does that mean? Well, it's come to mean that you're just thrown outside, you're cut off. But if we take a look at the Greek, Paul is actually referring to something in the Torah. Let me get into the Greek here. Look at maybe a different translation here. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed, or let him be under a curse. Let me go to the Greek here. This word accursed, an anathema. This is Strong's, that which is laid up, now notice, a votive offering. What does he mean by that? A definition here. That which is laid up, a votive offering, a thing, now notice, a thing devoted to God. A curse, the thing accursed. All right. What does this mean, a thing devoted to God? Well, this is actually from Leviticus 27. And actually, Paul is going back into the Torah. And is referring things that were devoted to God for, listen to what I'm saying, destruction. We can go down here in Help's word studies. Anathema. All right. A process which, let me just go through this, properly place up, referring to something, now notice, pledged, given up to destruction, devoted to God for destruction. It's not just being like cut off and thrown outside. This is something that's devoted to destruction. And I'm talking temporary destruction here, because there is going to be a second resurrection, and God is going to restore all in the second resurrection. One of the things this movement primarily teaches, that most of humanity is going to be exterminated in the lake of fire. That's just destroying the whole Torah and what the Torah is. The Torah is God's plan given to the Son concerning the restitution of all things, beginning with what? A priesthood. Your high priest and king, and then his helpmate, his body. That's who you are. That's who he's speaking to. That's one way you're going to understand Paul's writings. And to be a priest, the first law, the rule is, Leviticus chapter 8, you must die and be raised into the heavenly realm. You must become a huios son, a descendant, one who comes from the Ancient of Days. This is Moses, once again, taking on God in the shadow of the good things to come. This is actually God reproducing himself, the new birth, beginning with the Messiah and his bride. They all look like the Ancient of Days with the white hair and the white garments. Daniel 7. Anyways, so to be accursed, Paul was putting this being this devotion to destruction on these people that would come in and force you to be physically circumcised and keep the law as written by Moses, versus getting all these things through faith. You're a priest, you get it all. You're a finished product. No, not to go out and keep pagan holidays and a pagan Sabbath, seventh-day Sabbath. The Roman Catholic Church, once again, did not exist in the first century. It wasn't until the 3rd, 4th century that all this paganism crept in. These are fake debates by two fake movements. All right, Leviticus 27:29. No person under the ban who may become doomed to destruction among men shall be redeemed, but shall surely be put to death. This is what Paul was talking about concerning these letter of the law believers who would come in once he would establish an ecclesia. And after explaining to them, they got all these holy days, and they got the peace offering, the burnt off, the ascend off. All these things were given by faith and not by the works of those laws. Romans 3:21-31. All right? Think of Achan. He was put under the ban. Think of I forget exactly what chapter in 1 Samuel, when God told Samuel to destroy the Amalekites. They were given over to the ban. They were given for destruction. The Canaanites, the Amorites, when they went into the land, they were doomed to destruction. They were to be accursed. This is what Paul was referring to. This is what anyone who came in preaching another gospel to you, to the first fruits, to the priesthood, who got circumcision by faith. Colossians 2:11-12. Died and raised into the heavenlies. That's what the priests, they serve the shadow and copy of the heavenly things. Levites, you are there now through faith. The Torah of faith. Remember, Paul and the apostles thought they were living in the last days. For this we say, 1 Thessalonians 4:15-18, for this we say to you by the word of Yahweh, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord. So I didn't mean to call Jesus Yahweh, if that's referring to Yahweh. That he's not Yahweh, the Lord, supreme ruler, will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord, Yeshua, will descend from heaven with a shout. This is the day of trumpets. This is the fulfillment of trumpets. You'll get it by faith. This is the day of shouting. This is the end. This is actually the Day of Atonement, the end of the 7 trumpets. With the voice of an archangel, right? Colossians 2:16-17. But the reality can be found in the Messiah. He had them in the shadow blow the trumpets, beginning on the Day of Trumpets. The voice of an archangel and with the trumpet of God. Right? The trumpet of God. And the dead in Messiah will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall always be with the Lord. And we who remain. I did a video on this concerning what that consuming fire is in Hebrews chapter 10. They all thought they were in the last days. So when Paul committed these people to a curse, this is how vehement and this is how strong he was against this movement. He put them under the ban. He devoted them to destruction. Remember, he was in the last days. Or he thought he was in the last days. What did he do to these people who believe you got to keep the law as written by Moses, the letter, the gramma, the shadow. He devoted them to destruction. Hey, man, it's not me. Your contention is with Paul. All right. In the latter days, well, we're in the latter days, all right? Let me get into, he's devoted them to be destroyed. Let me get into this Facebook conversation. This guy, he did a post on a group about Revelation. Right? If it was a sin 1,000 years ago, it's still a sin today. Don't water down the gospel for this offended generation. So here's a guy who believes that the gospel is keeping Torah as written by Moses. All right. So this guy lives and he's going to believe that I am a mainstream Christian. He's going to call me a Christian. This is typical. All right. So I'm going to leave him a little message like I usually do leave posts like this as a witness. Here's me. Revelation 3:9. The gospel's not keeping Torah. All right. So I want to show you. I'm gonna skip over some of this conversation, but I may do a video on this tomorrow or next week because this is a teaching in itself. But I want to zero in. He's telling me, this guy's telling me that I have to keep all the commandments, as many as I can. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zero down. I'm going to zero in on something here. Let me zero in on it. All right. So I brought up to him Philippians 3:9. He's telling me that to be righteous you have to keep the law of Moses, and he's rolling off of Deuteronomy 6:25. If we keep all these commandments, it will be our righteousness, and this is what Paul was arguing against in Philippians chapter 3. He was telling the believers, rejoice in Christ Jesus, through him, by him, in him. If you'll read his epistles, you were circumcised with the circumcision made without hands. In him you were redeemed. Through him you were redeemed. He is the atonement. All right, he's the mercy seat. This is what Paul was talking about. Paul was not talking about now it's okay to keep Christmas and Easter, and the Sunday is the seventh-day Sabbath, and the Gregorian calendar versus the shadow calendar of God with the holy days. This was not the debate. All right, this man is trusting in his own righteousness, and this is what Paul warned about. Don't rejoice in Christ Jesus, who gives you all these things through his fulfillments of them. Through faith. And he was telling them to have no confidence in the flesh or your own effort. Every year they had to produce a lamb and go up to the temple and have it offered. They had to put leavening out of their houses. They had to do the work themselves. Paul was trying to show you in his epistles that he did it for you. And this is what you're going to teach the common people of the land. Here's me to this guy. Philippians 3:9. And being found in him, not having my own righteousness, which is from the law, as written by Moses. Doing all this stuff. Okay, so listen to what I'm going to chime in here on this conversation. It was a long conversation, and I don't want to. Where am I at? 30 minutes. Okay, listen to what I said to this guy. So, building on Philippians 3:9, I have questions for starters. Now, notice, I ask this man, did you receive the Passover by faith in Messiah when you first believed, or when you did it by the work of that shadow law on its shadow appointed time? This was Paul's argument. I got the Passover, the end fulfillment, which gets established for all time, for Christ is the end of the Torah, versus doing it, the work of that law, once a year. Now I'm asking this guy a question. And we'll get into what Peter witnessed concerning teachers in the last days. So this is your kinsman redeemer. This is the one who bought you back. This is the one who redeemed you from sin and from the bondage of sin. Okay, so I'm putting this guy. I'm putting him to. I'm asking him, did you receive the Passover? Was it fulfilled in your life on the day you believed, or by the work of that law in its appointed, shadow-appointed time? So he came back and he said, you're free to believe what you wish. I will continue to do what I have been doing. Now notice, it is my righteousness to obey him. This is what Paul was talking about. Somebody who's doing this stuff he hasn't died or been raised a new creation. Right? Someone like that is still in his flesh, wearing his tassels. He's a common person of the land. He hasn't died or been raised. He's under a law that will bust him as a sinner. To have the righteousness of God is to be given the imputed, his inherent righteousness. This is your destiny. Not to be an eternal commandment keeper keeping the law of Moses forever. And that's what they teach. They're destroying your end. They're destroying your destiny. They're destroying your inheritance. In reality, what they teach, you will always be this. This is why it's so demonic. Just like mainstream Christianity and the closed Trinity family. Satan has used the Torah with this evil movement. These people are deceived. They turn them into liars. They twist and bend and distort Paul's writings. Or, they actually believe he's a false apostle. Okay, so now notice it is my righteousness that I obey him. Just like Jesus said in Matthew 4:4, you obey every word, not what you think is right. Okay. Lawlessness will not enter the kingdom. Hey, I don't keep Christmas, Easter. I'm not in that. I actually was in the Worldwide Church of God at one time. Okay. I kept the laws written by Moses, not like these people are, though. They're just completely they won't even acknowledge you get the Messiah by faith. And not by the work of that law. Because if they admit it, you know what? You don't have to keep it, do you? Once a year. You got it by faith. And have I made void the Torah through faith? No, I have established it. Right? Have I made void the Torah through faith? Romans 3:31. No. When I got the Passover on that day, it was established. This does nothing for you. It was for a shadow people coming out of a shadow bondage in Egypt. This is what releases you from the bondage of sin. The reality, for Christ is the end of the law of the Passover lamb. He is the lamb. That's all witness in Peter. Okay. He can't. Okay, so he's going to dodge my question. He dodged it. Now I go here. Now I respond. Answer my question. Did you receive the Passover by faith in the Messiah when you first believed? Or when you did it by the work of that shadow law in its shadow appointed time? Now this is twice. Now notice what he says. If you can't understand Paul and others, just listen to the Messiah. But he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. He said to obey every word, not some of the words, or only the parts you like, because if you had true faith in him, you would obey him. But it also says that the law was a shadow of the good things to come and not the very image. It was an outline. That's what shadow means, an outline, and not the very image. Prove me wrong. Shadow, lamb, not the real image. See, these people don't know how to rightly divide the truth because they're locked in a false paradigm. It's them and mainstream Christianity. This guy's treating me, and he calls me a Christian. And I even called him out. I says, how do you call me? How do you know I'm a Christian? What makes you think that I'm a Christian? Because he automatically thinks that I keep Christmas, Easter, Sunday as the Saturday Sabbath. Because that's the world he lives in. They don't know how to rightly divide the word. Is this not a shadow? This does nothing for me. And in the world, in the age to come, you're going to teach the common people of the land. They're going to, Jeremiah 3, Jeremiah 23. I'll put shepherds over them, the lost sheep, and they will feed them with knowledge. These people just think that they're disregarding their Redeemer. As I'll show Peter witness this in the last days. What happened? Okay. Now I ask them this, because he's into every commandment, right? Now let me ask you this. When you kept the Passover, or when you keep it once a year, was your lamb a year old? Was it without blemish? And did you roast it with fire with its entrails, being obedient to every word of those commands? Actually, you have to take it to Jerusalem. It changed when they entered the land. You had to go up to Jerusalem, and you had to have it slaughtered in Jerusalem at the temple. But I threw him a bone here. Okay, so did you get a lamb without blemish? A year old? Did you roast it with fire with its entrails, with its innards, being obedient to every word? And I said this, and one more time, for the law having a shadow of the good things to come and not the very image, those things, my question. I asked him once again, did you receive the Passover by faith in Messiah when you first believed, or when you did it by the work of that shadow law in its shadow appointed time? He didn't answer my question. My questions. Okay, so he went on, he started to quote a bunch of scriptures that are cherry-picked and out of context. Okay. He said this to me, you really want to defend a lawless, sinful life. You Christians are something else. He branded me a mainstream Orthodox Christian who keeps pagan holidays. See, this is the world that they live in. This is the stuff that I've been witnessing to you. I called him out again. Lawless? ? Here is your chance to defend your obedience. So let me ask you this. When you kept the Passover, was your lamb a year old? Was it without blemish? Right? You shall live by every word of God. Right? He quoted Matthew 4:4. That proceeds forth from the mouth of God. When you kept the Passover, was your lamb a year old? Was it without blemish? And did you roast it with fire with its entrails, being obedient to every word of those commands? And I said, and how am I a Christian? So he quoted Deuteronomy 12:32. What things soever I command you, observe to do it. You shall not add there or nor diminish it. He couldn't answer my question. You know why? So if he admits that he got the Passover by faith, then you don't need the work of that law. You got it by faith. You see, these holy days are institutions to bring you back into the presence of God, into the Garden of Eden, which ultimately will be fulfilled in Revelation 21:22. What have these people done? They've turned it into a religion where these shadow-appointed times are an end in themselves. I've heard them say it. You're going to keep them forever. And I said again, answer my question. My questions, excuse me. He wouldn't do it. Okay? He wouldn't do it. Why? Because if he admits he got it by faith, you don't need to do it. He's so ingrained, he said, it's my righteousness. I pointed that out to you. This is what Paul meant in Philippians 3. Not having my own righteousness, which is from the law, or as written by Moses, but that which comes through faith. The righteousness of faith in Christ Jesus. You got this stuff by faith. This was never a debate between pagan Christianized holidays and a Sabbath versus the fixed old shadow appointed times. It's a fake debate. All right. So concerning this man, and he did not do the Passover as commanded by Yahweh, a lamb a year old, without blemish. He probably went out and got a leg of lamb, like we used to do, my wife and I. And he celebrated the Passover. No innards, no roasted in fire. That's important. As written by Moses. If you don't do that, if you roast a blemished lamb, part of it, whose bones might have been broken. This is what Paul meant. For as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone who does not continue in all things written in the book of the Torah to do them. When you have all this stuff put in place, when you have your priesthood established in the millennium, when you have the common people of the land beginning with the lost sheep returning, and then all the nations grafted in, then all this stuff can be performed and you can teach them these things. This guy's under a curse. He's blaspheming by not performing, if it's right, if it's his righteousness. See, you got all that. You got an unblemished lamb, a year old by faith. This is what Paul's argument was. You got to read all his epistles to understand what he was talking about. All right, let's get to what Peter said about false teachers. What's going to happen to this movement? What's going to happen to all false religious movements in the latter days, I believe? They're going to be destroyed. As they came, so they'll go. Notice what Peter says, but there were also false prophets among the people, talking about ancient Israel from chapter 1. This is rolling into chapter 2. Remember, Peter thought he also was in the last days, but the end of all things is at hand. At chapter 3. And he thought they were in the last days too. Now notice this. Okay, I want you to zero in on this. But there are also false prophets among the people, even as there will be false teachers among you. Peter believed that he was in the last days. Now notice, who will secretly bring in from what? The outside. That's the mystery of the unclean beast, by the way. They're outside the kingdom. Dogs in the lake of fire. Who will bring in a wolf, an unclean beast, and a clean beast's garment, creeping in from outside. Who will secretly bring in, notice, destructive heresies. Listen, even denying the Lord who bought them. You know, this is an allusion of reference to the Passover and the kinsman redeemer redeeming you and buying you back from the bondage of sin. What did this guy not do? He could not admit that he got the true Passover lamb by faith. He said it had to be his righteousness to obey and do it. He denied the Lord who bought them. This man denied the Lord that bought them. I've had 6 of them tell me. 6 of them couldn't admit that they got the Passover by faith, that they had to do it. You see what they're doing. You see how far this movement is creeping into heresy, destructive heresies. They're maximizing the shadow of the law and doing away with the end fulfillment of the law, which you get by faith and not by the work of that law. You see on that? Even denying the Lord who bought them. They're denying the Passover, which you get by faith. Let me just jump back here to chapter 1. Let's go to verse 19 or 18. Excuse me. Oh, this is 2 Peter. Forgive me. I'll get to it in a. Well, Peter in 1 Peter 1, you were not redeemed with silver or gold, but you were redeemed by the precious blood of a lamb. Redeemed. Bought. You got it by faith. All right, notice. denying the Lord who bought them, who redeemed them, bought them back from bondage, and bring on themselves swift destruction. What movement? Okay. My righteousness, if I do it. He's trusting in what? His own works. He's trusting, he's having, his confidence is in his flesh. This is what Paul was talking about. Rejoice in Christ Jesus, your Redeemer, your Lamb, which you got by faith, and have no confidence in the flesh, your own works. Not having my own righteousness, which is from the law, the work of that law, the shadow, but the righteousness that comes by faith, even the faith in our Lord Jesus Christ. Get it? This man could not admit. Notice, Peter, it's here, man. They're here again. And they thought they were in the last days. We're in the last days now. And bring on themselves swift destruction. And many will follow their destructive ways, because of whom the way of truth will not be blasphemed. When you can't admit you got the Passover lamb, the man by faith, you're blaspheming. It's a heresy. You see how extreme this movement is going. By covetousness, they will exploit you with deceptive words. How many videos have I shown you how they lie? They bend, they twist. For a long time their judgment has not been idle, and their destruction does not slumber. They destroy everything. All the way up to the destiny of humanity. Most of them claiming that you're going to be burned up. Most of humanity. Paul gave them over to the ban for destruction. What's going to happen to mainstream Christianity? What's going to happen to the harlot, the Roman Catholic Church? Revelation 17:15-17. Then he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, and nations and tongues. So wherever the Roman Catholic Church is sitting, that's going to be the end time beast kingdom. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. This harlot and her daughters are going to be destroyed. They've destroyed the whole Bible and Torah. This Hebrew roots movement also is going to be given up to the ban and destroyed. And there's a clue in, I know who they are. Oh, by the way, Daniel 11:37, he shall regard neither the God of his fathers nor the desire of women. He's not talking about actual women. This is a dark saying. What is a church likened to? An ecclesia. A woman. I have betrothed you as a chaste virgin to Messiah. Right? Any religious organization under his realm is going to be destroyed. Let's finish it with this. Revelation 3:8-10. This church of Philadelphia, it's promised to escape the tribulation. I know what you are doing, verse 8. Look, I have put in front of you an open door, and no one can shut it. I know that you have but little power. Yet you have obeyed my message and have not disowned me. Notice verse 9. Who want to be Jews? Who wants to look like Hebrews, Jews, dress like Hebrews and Jews? Who wants to speak like Hebrews and Jews? Who wants to be Hebrew? You've crossed over. You're a Hebrew. You're grafted in to Israel. You're grafted into the priesthood. You're grafted in as a firstborn from the dead. You've been raised and given the righteousness of God without the Torah, being witnessed by the Torah and the prophets. Paul ultimately witnessing in allusions the Torah of the priesthood, Romans 6, Colossians 2, 11, 12, Ephesians 2, 4, 7, raised with the Messiah, yoked to the risen man. You can't be unequally yoked. Who wants to be Jews or Hebrews but lies about everything? Can't even admit that they get the Messiah by faith, denying the one who bought him. Notice this message to this ecclesia. Here I will give you some from the synagogue of the adversary. This is the complete Jewish Bible. This is the accurate translation from the Greek. This is not like these people are raised from the dead and these fake Jews are coming and they're falling down before them. This is... I'm going to let my phone go there. So anyways, my phone's going off in the background. Anyways. Hopefully that'll quit here. Yeah, it quit. All right. Okay. Here I will give you some from the synagogue of the adversary. So it looks like some from this synagogue, or whatever it is, and I believe it's the Hebrew Roots Movement I'm witnessing, because they lie. They have to lie. They have to lie about the epistles. And they have to lie about the Torah. To try to make their doctrine work. Those who call themselves Jews but aren't. On the contrary, they are lying. See, I will cause them, some of them, to come and prostrate themselves at your feet. And they will know that I have loved you. Okay, because you did obey my message about persevering, I will keep you from the time of trial coming upon the world, the whole world, to put the people living on earth to the test. This is talking about the Great Tribulation. This church is promised to get out. But this synagogue of Ha-Satan, it appears that some of them will abdicate to this church. But the rest won't escape. I believe this is the Hebrew Roots Movement. They will, because of their gross heresies, because they're destroying the whole Torah. They're destroying the work of the Messiah, which you get through faith. They, along with Mystery Babylon, will be given over to destruction. Temporary. They'll be raised in the second resurrection. But again, in the end, test all things. Let the spirits be tested. That's who I believe. That's what I believe the fate of this movement will be in the last days. They're destroying the whole Torah. That conversation, that part of that conversation I showed you is just a sample. They can't bring themselves to what? They can't bring themselves to what? Acknowledge the one who bought them. Trusting instead in the work of that law, or the shadow work of that law. Free gift through grace. No, not to go out and begin to keep pagan holidays, Christianized holidays. Didn't exist in the first century. Was never the debate. So that's my 2 cents on the fate of this fake demonic movement, the Hebrew roots Torah movement. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening.